Next question. There's no one around me, you'll love this one. There's no one around me who is interested in spirituality. I feel alone and sometimes lose enthusiasm. What should I do? It's interesting. There's no one around me who is interested in spirituality. My own personal perspective on this is whether you're interested in it or not, you're experiencing it. And that sense of I feel alone and sometimes lose enthusiasm, well, I think that just comes part and parcel of the human condition, that we feel alienated from each other, from being understood, from being connected. And so whether somebody's into spirituality or not, they want to be able to experience that greater depth. Maybe you have gotten to a point where you're actively going about changing that, and they haven't arrived at that point yet. But ultimately, they would like to get there. But doing so, if you open your mouth and you start talking about it, it's overwhelming for people to think that they've got it all wrong. It's overwhelming for people to think that their persona, the ego identity that they have, is not the real them. It's difficult to work through that. So if we start opening up and pontificating about what we're doing is right and how they've got it all wrong and how they are not being able to understand what everything's really about, but you have it all on, then it's just going to reinforce that sense of alienation. I had, I suppose, from my own experience on this path, when I was in my mid-20s up to, I suppose mid-30s, 33, I was very sincere in how I was going about the practice, and it was I was very rigorous. And if you've listened to Ryan's podcast, you might have heard me talking about this, where I kept to the routine of a very disciplined yoga practitioner, and I was very, I suppose, a little bit confused around this issue too, because you'd hear people saying you need to be around people who are going to help you to experience that sattvic state of consciousness. You need to be able to promote that, and a lot of people in my life weren't necessarily into spirituality. So what I mean into spirituality, I mean they weren't doing the formal practices I was doing. Because what I later realized is a great many people who I had the good fortune to have in my life were actually very good people. They had very strong values, they lived by them. They didn't get up in the morning to practice meditation like I did. They didn't do the journaling, they didn't do the reading of all the books. But they had a kind of their own innate way to kind of navigate their life in a way where they actually demonstrated a sincerity which I was lacking. Because I had put myself on a pedestal where it was, I'm a yoga practitioner, I'm doing these practices, I'm adhering to the teachings, I know better than these people, and they're all idiots. Well, I'm being a bit dramatic, but...
No, you mean it.
Well, I isolated myself. So when we talk about alienation and this idea of being, I feel alone, we do that to ourselves. We put ourselves in a position where we feel like I can't associate myself with these other people because I'm a practitioner of yoga and they're not. And we kind of diminish them and their quality and their value. And so we isolate ourselves. And, when we go to a party or we go for dinner or we're with a group of people, we have that judgment going on. We kind of like, look at them all drinking, or look at them all doing this, or look at them all doing that. I need to go back and meditate because I'm a good yoga practitioner. And we almost become a little bit obsessive about the whole thing, where we're not allowing life, the way I like to talk about life. Like, this is an experience of the expression and it's going on. And there's maybe the things they're doing might be a heavy energy. It might be dragging you down. And so you can choose in that moment to step away from it. But there's many moments, that it's not necessarily like that, but we can still be heavily critical of it. I don't know, I remember instances The family meeting up, people calling over, and they'd be talking, and they'd be talking about the neighbours, and they'd be talking about this and all these kind of things that people do, and you're sitting there kind of just judging. But there's a presence in those people which is very beautiful, and they're trying to connect with one another, and they're trying to be with one another, and you have this opportunity to share the presence with them. And so it's not about the things they're saying necessarily. It's not about all of this. It's just about being in that presence. But if you start judging them and feeling that what you're doing is far superior, you will feel isolated and alone. And there's no need to kind of persecute yourself in that way, because life is for enjoying. But when you're practicing your practices, take them seriously and do them. But when you're living life, embrace life. It's your attitude that's going to change the experience. And an attitude of judgment is going to create a lonely experience. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, a little bit more of a direct answer because Ryan's my teacher.
I told you he'd love this question.
About sort of feeling alone or feeling isolated or nobody in your community that's into Kriya yoga. I can hear the words of Ryan saying, don't be concerned about what others do or don't do. And from going on from the previous question about, after being quiet, my next thing, especially at the beginning, would be consistent. So just do the practice, do the work, be consistent. Dry patches, rough patches, ups, downs, whatever they might be, just trust it. And don't be concerned about what others do or don't do.